Recently, my cousin and cousin-in-law have been thinking about relocating to our state because of recent job opportunities, and we've hosted them in the past when they visited. The first time they stayed with us, before my son was born, my nephew seemed to develop a strong attachment to my wife and always wanted to be near her. He drew a picture of a heart and picked some flowers from our yard and gave them to her before they left, saying he loved her. My wife thought this was sweet and gently handled his crush by telling him she would always love him as his aunt. But she was sure he would find another girl to fill his heart soon. He told her no, she was his girlfriend. This weekend, they were staying with us again, and my nephew again wanted to be near my wife every chance he got. His mom and dad noticed and told him that because my wife now had to care for our son, she couldn't pay attention to him as much as before. He got upset telling us that she was his girlfriend and had a meltdown, which caused my son to start crying. When my wife got up to take our son to another room to calm him down, my nephew got up to follow and his dad had to forcibly restrain him from following them. I stood up to block the hallway into the separate room just in case he got away from his dad. Once they calmed him down, they apologized for his behavior and said they would keep better tabs on him. Here's the part where I may be the asshole. I told my cousins I didn't feel comfortable with my nephew being so possessive of my wife, and I know for sure she didn't. Especially since he seemed to be so jealous of our son. I told them I couldn't allow their son in our home until he learned to control himself and understand that my wife was not his girlfriend. I apologized but asked them to get a hotel room for the rest of their stay and not to visit us again unless they left my nephew behind with people they could trust and knew would care for him, while they searched for jobs in our state. They didn't say anything but looked saddened and went to the guest room with their son to pack up their bags. I guess they must have told my extended family what happened because my paternal grandmother called me this afternoon, telling me that I should have been more understanding and that I was wrong to ask them to leave. Am I the asshole? Technically, my cousin is my second cousin. My dad is an only child, so the cousin I refer to in my post is the son of my own dad's first cousin. My paternal grandmother and his paternal grandfather were siblings. I'm not sure if this is correct, but his autistic son would technically be my third cousin. The reason I refer to him as my nephew is because he's the generation after mine in our family tree, and it's less of a mouthful to refer to him as cousin X removed. A lot of people have posted that it's not correct to refer to him as my nephew, but to be frank, I don't care. And my family's never followed this traditional genealogy nomenclature. Without being specific, in the western state I was born and grew up in, it's not uncommon to refer to even close, unrelated adults as uncles or aunts. I call him my nephew because my cousin and I were close, and I still hope to have a close relationship with him if at all possible. Though I don't know how after this situation. Some have asked if I was jealous of my nephew calling my wife his GF. The first time, I thought it was amusing and was surprised that he had any romantic notions towards anyone, let alone my wife. Remember, in my mind he's my nephew and I never thought of him as anything other than a large kid because of his developmental delays and normal, for him, childlike behavior. Regarding the situation that happened this weekend, I was only concerned for my wife and son's safety. I didn't know how he would react and followed my cousin's lead, but wasn't about to let him get near my wife and son once they left the room. I don't know what was said to my paternal grandmother, but I don't want to react in anger and want to talk to my cousin once we've both had time to process what happened and calmed down. I am a gemologist. I spend my days in the lab testing and identifying stones. From the nature of my work, I also have a large and valuable collection of jewelry, but also gem specimens that I keep in a safe I specifically bought and had installed to keep them safe. I also have a second smaller safe for keeping important documents like passports. I own my home, and my boyfriend of 2 years recently moved in as he was renting before. I gave him the code to the smaller safe so he could put valuables in it, but he also wants the code for my gem safe. Not to put anything in it, but he says because we are living together now I should trust him and give him the code. I've said no because he has no reason to open the safe as the only thing it's used for is storing my collection. He said he has no interest in my gem collection, doesn't want to look at them, but still wants the code to access them. This is causing tension because he says I should give it to him as a show of trust, and I said no, because he literally has no reason to go in there, so he doesn't need the code. This is a 6-figure collection, so I'm not being difficult over a few little gems here. I am the only one who knows the code. The safe weighs nearly half a ton, it's bolted to the floor and wall and is from a company who makes safes, vaults and strong rooms for jewelers. You could bring the house down around it and it would still be intact. All of the gems and jewelry in the safe are mine and mine alone. I do not keep any clients' jewelry at home. For my other business doing valuations, I rent a separate space and keep client items there. I will give an update once things have panned out. I've moved all of my personal docs out of the little safe and into my gem safe. I told him he isn't getting the code and I will die on this hill. He has no reason to have it, and his continued lack of respect by the pushing of my boundaries wasn't okay. I felt like he was trying to manipulate me by making it about trust. After a lot of back and forth, he finally admitted that he wanted access to the safe, because he didn't feel like I was sharing the whole house with him. Because I insisted on a tenancy agreement rather than just letting him move in. And he didn't like that part of where he lived was off limits to him. He was also insecure and resented that I have more money than him and own a home whilst he doesn't. He had made a few comments about this before, but I didn't realize it was such a big issue for him. He also said that by keeping him out of the safe made him feel like I thought he was lesser than me, and that it made him feel like I was treating him like a child. I told him if that's how he feels, then this is not the right relationship for either of us, and that it was best we break up. He was shocked that I was ending things over this, cried and asked me to reconsider. When I said no, he then got angry. Called me a stuck-up B***tch, said he was better off without me anyway, and went to his friends. I told him via text he had 30 days before he had to leave, as per the tenancy agreement. So he didn't need to stay at a friend's, he said he would be gone by the end of the week. 2 days later he came back and packed up all of his stuff and left. He's staying with his friend now. I have changed all the locks. I have an alarm and CCTV system that's professionally monitored, and I have changed the verbal password I have to give when you call up as a precaution. I've checked all of my collection and it hasn't been touched. I also am giving my solicitor the code and safe deposit details to be passed to my executor in the event of my death. I feel horrible because despite all of this I love him. I should have a partner who not only respects my boundaries but takes an interest. I'm pretty cut up right now and missing him, but I know I'll be okay. I have great friends and family around me. Also, diamonds are a girl's best friend, and I have a few knocking around to help cheer me up. I've always cleaned as I cook so that when it gets to the end of the meal, there's minimal mess. My husband is the opposite. When he cooks, it's like a bomb went off. I've encouraged him to clean as he cooks. And if we're doing a big meal / holiday meal together, I often make sure to assign him that role. Like most people, one of us cooks, the other one cleans up. I am the better cook, so I cook like 80% of the time. He gets an easy cleanup. I'm busier than usual at work, so he's had to step up. Whenever he's done, the kitchen is a mess. I don't even get how it happens. There will be oil splatters untouched, stuff drying to dishes, peels and meat. I'm not about to let food sit out overnight, so after I'm done eating I'll start the process and won't get to really relax much. Last week I asked if he could please try cleaning as he cooks. He told me the rule is one person cooks, the other person cleans. I said I get that, but you're leaving me with a huge mess every night. He said I just don't have the time to clean up when I'm focused on cooking, knowing full well I'll see him scrolling on his phone. I just got so fed up, so on Sunday I made a big pot of chili. I didn't clean up as I worked. When I was done, I served him, sat down, enjoyed a beer and dinner. When he finally went into the kitchen, he said, "What the? Why is there such a mess?" I said that I was too busy paying attention to the chili to clean up. I started to get ready for bed. He was like, "You're just going to leave this here?" And I said yes. He said he would have to wake up extra early to clean up and that he had to be at work earlier than usual, and was supposed to play a game with his friends later that night, so could I just clean up? I said no, I cooked, so he has to clean. 2 days later he's still pissy with me because he ended up not being able to game and told me that he didn't get enough sleep, and was exhausted at work. Not to be too snarky, but it's not like he's a surgeon, because I had to prove a point to him. I told him that nothing else seemed to get his attention, and I feel pretty justified. He told me I was being a smug asshole about it and it was childish. We don't have a dishwasher, there's no room for one, so everything has to be done by hand. Additionally, doing the dishes means cleaning up the counters and stovetop and sweeping the floor, taking out the trash if need be. When I make chili, it's a process starting // dried chilies that I toast, soak, seed, pulverize, etc. Then there's cooking the dried beans, then there's the onions and garlic and the peels, any other veggies, seeding tomato, cans of tomato, grinding the spices, etc. Then there's grating cheese for the top, etc. It definitely left a ton of dishes and other stuff behind. So another thing that comes up is whoever cooks also cleans, but since I cook most of the time, I just don't see that as being also fair to me. I'll end up spending almost every single day after work, I've been ending work at 6 or 7 some days lately, cooking and cleaning. If I had him cook more, I would definitely start to gain weight and then we'd have another issue altogether. I believe it started when I was around 6 years old. My parents often had friends over in the house. I didn't know they were polyamorous OFC. One day I was outside playing, got hurt, and when I ran inside caught my parents making out with some random guy. They told me they have other adults that they love and it's a completely normal thing. Me being a child just accepted that. They gave up being secretive and their partners would constantly be around, even joining on outings. I remember that on my 10th birthday they invited 3 of their partners, one of who I'd never seen before. And for the rest of the day my parents just withdrew from my party and hung out with them. I never saw them doing anything explicit again, but they would kiss their partners, hug them, make flirty comments. Something that would be normal between parents but with many more people. Sometimes I came home from school and my parents were gone and there was some random adult in our house. Some of them seemed surprised that my parents even had a child. I always hated it, but since my parents had told me this was normal, I assumed many adults probably did similar things and that it's just an adult thing all kids hate. Later they had less partners and eventually seemed to stop. Not that I'd know for sure. I moved out with 17. I didn't think about it anymore. A year ago I started therapy, other reasons. As usual, the topic of my upbringing came up and it brought back many feelings I wasn't aware of. I realized that although my parents were always good to me, I had never really felt close to any of them and still have a lot of resentment, that they made me feel like I had to compete for my parents' attention with random strangers. A while ago, I visited them and they told me they are going to take part in a documentary about polyamorous families, and that the producers would like to include interviews with the children. So they would love if I could agree and tell everyone that polyamory doesn't mess kids up. All my resentment bubbled up and I said that I cannot agree because I would not be able to say anything positive. My parents looked shocked. I had never brought this up before, and asked why, and I unloaded all, that I always felt pushed aside. We barely had any family time without strangers intruding. It turned into an argument and I became loud and yelled that the truth is it did me up and they shouldn't have had a child. My mother cried and my father said I should probably leave. So I left and was shaken up for the rest of the week, but also felt regret because I've never made my mom cry before. Later my father sent me a message that was like, "We are sorry you feel that way. Can we have a calm discussion about this soon?" Even though I tried to, it's like I can't reply. This argument brought something very emotional up in me.